Hi everyone, it's Asha, and I am back with another Ask Asha. Except that this week, no one actually asked me about this, which is why I decided to make a video about it because I think it's really important and people need to be aware of it. And what I'm referring to is TikTok. Yes, the app. And some of you, many of you, most of you, may have TikTok on your phones and you enjoy the app and you are probably very happy to have it and watch it and enjoy it. The thing is, you're actually not supposed to have it at this moment. And that's because last year Congress passed a law called, and I always forget the name, so I have to read it out, the Protecting America from Foreign Adversary Controlled Applications Act. And you might have heard this law referred to as the TikTok ban. That's actually not an accurate statement. The law actually didn't ban TikTok. The law required TikTok's parent company, ByteDance, which has Chinese ownership, to divest that foreign ownership within 270 days to a U.S. owner. Or if it didn't do that, that didn't mean that, anyone who still had the app was then like a criminal or something like that. This is not even a criminal law. What happened if it failed to divest its ownership was that third-party providers like Apple and Google were no longer allowed to carry the app on their platforms, which meant that new users wouldn't be able to download the app, existing owners wouldn't be able to get updates, and presumably it would eventually stop working. If these third-party providers continued to carry the app in violation of the law after ByteDance refused to, or failed to divest its ownership, these platforms could be charged $5,000 per user that downloaded or updated their app. So you can imagine the fines were very, very stiff, fines are very, very stiff under this law. Now, we can go into the reasons that this law was passed. It was passed for national security reasons. It was passed on a bipartisan basis. I mean, when you see people like Tom Cotton and Mitch McConnell signing on to something that, Joe Biden is going to pass, that should make you kind of pay attention. And I'll include something in the notes to this video that goes into the national security risks, but I would put them in three big buckets, which is disinformation, data collection and espionage, and malware, and at a very high degree, given what China has been doing over the last few years. But let's leave the reasons for the law aside. That's not really what I want to talk about. What I want to talk about is that this law was supposed to take effect on January 19th of this year, the day before Trump was inaugurated. And the Supreme Court actually ruled on the constitutionality of this law 2 days before that. It sort of gave a very quick ruling on this, so that it wouldn't delay necessarily this law taking effect. But once Trump got into office, he issued an executive order delaying the effective date of this legislation, and saying that he wasn't going to be enforcing it for 75 days. Now, the law actually includes a provision that allows the president to delay the effective date of the legislation for 90 days if ByteDance is in the process of formally divesting its foreign ownership. In other words, they have a contract in place and they're, working out the deal. Then it basically has this provision to allow these third-party providers to continue offering the app uninterrupted. What Trump did, he, as far as I know, and has not certified to Congress as required under the law that any kind of agreement is in place. But he first extended it for 75 days, then in April until June, and then most recently, he extended it again from June until September. And there's just nothing in the law that's allowing him to do this. And that here is the problem. And last week, we actually found out the legal rationale that he and his Justice Department are using to basically say that they don't have to enforce this law, which is, by the way, a law, and there are people in violation of it. And the first rationale was actually a letter from Attorney General Pam Bondi to these third-party companies, basically saying, we're not going to go after you or hold you liable or try to enforce this law against you. And that's just, my prerogative as the Attorney General to not enforce that. Already, that's kind of bad. I mean, the Justice Department does make trade-offs. They don't and can't enforce every violation of the law all the time, but to kind of basically, she claimed to kind of relinquish all claims against these people was already problematic, because she was sort of trying to neuter this law and allow these companies to continue operating. But in this most recent extension that Trump issued in June, allowing these third-party platforms to continue offering the app until September, Attorney General Pam Bondi makes an even more startling claim. She not only says, we're not going to enforce this against you, she makes claims about President Trump's authority to basically say that the law doesn't apply to them because it interferes with his constitutional duties. This is a very huge claim of executive power. Basically, she says this law can't be read to infringe on his constitutional duties. And not only are we not going to enforce this, but we believe that you are actually not violating the law at all by continuing to offer this app. Here's why this is a problem. That's basically Trump acting as a legislator. He's basically undone the law. And this is his attorney general basically acting as a judge and jury and saying, okay, well, I've decided that you're not in violation of it. This is really a usurpation of power from the other two branches, because what Pam Bondi is doing in this letter is basically giving permission for these third-party providers to continue breaking the law. She's basically licensing lawlessness. And we've seen this administration already engage itself in lawless actions, but what they're doing now is basically giving permission for other people to break the law. You might not think this is a big deal in terms of TikTok. Who cares, you say? I just don't believe that this is a big deal. If Google and Apple want to continue offering it, I think that's fine. Whatever you think of this law, the principle here can be applied to anything. If the Trump administration can basically say this law doesn't apply, and if you do it, we're going to believe that you're acting completely lawfully, that can be extended to any number of other contexts, and that becomes incredibly dangerous. In fact, this was a power that the King of England used to have, and it was called the dispensing power. Basically the power to dispense with the law and basically make it, non-effective, or to give people permission based on his own, whoever he liked and his preferences, give people permission to break the law. And eventually Parliament revoked that power from him because it became incompatible with the idea that you have some other body that is passing laws. And I think that this is really an extension from what we've seen with the pardons that Trump issued to the people on January 6th, which basically absolved them and told them that what they did was okay, to now going and starting to test the waters of being able to give people permission to break the law. And look, if you don't like a law, doesn't mean that we have to live with it for the rest of our lives, but we do have processes in place that to address that. So you can repeal it. I mean, we remember back in Trump's first term when the Republicans tried to repeal the Affordable Care Act. And I didn't agree with that, but at least they were working within the rules, understanding that this was a law that was passed by Congress that is operative, that in order for it to become defunct, they actually have to work through the democratic processes in order to do that. And so this is really just bypassing that and usurping all of that authority into one person. I think the most autocratic move that Trump has made, and it's not as flashy and, I guess obvious in the sense of, sending people to form gulags and putting military in the streets. Those are bad, don't get me wrong. But this is truly crazy in terms of how it purports to read the Constitution. And unless we have pushback against this kind of lawlessness and licensing of lawlessness, this dispensing power, this kingly power that Trump is basically asserting for himself, then we are going to end up back in the days of a monarchy, where just like when the King of England got to select who got to break the law and who would be absolved for it. So that is my video for this week, my little PSA. I'll include some links to articles that you can read if this is something that you want to find out more about. And if you have any other questions for Ask Asha, please put them in the comments and I will make a note and try to get to them.
Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.